All right, folks, from the shores of the Great Slave Lake, right here in scenic and slushy Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Canada, straight over to Chi-Town with my next guest, Paul Kuhr of legendary doom metal, I suppose. Although there's sort of a bit of a melting pot going on. November's Doom on the line with me today. How you doing, man?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. Actually, as I was going in there, I kind of had to stop myself because I mean to sort of pigeonhole you guys into the doom metal category wouldn't be entirely accurate.
And you don't know how much I appreciate you for even saying that because you, we that's been a bit of a stickler for us from day one. Putting the word doom in our band name kind of pigeonholed us in that category, no matter what we do. So yeah, we've been fighting for 28 years to not be labeled just a doom band because there is so much more to what we do than just that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think it's just a habit of, radio people, even independent radio people like myself to want to compartmentalize and this, especially your band. I mean, like I said off the top, you guys are a melting pot of a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, I just think people in general, they're more comfortable putting things into categories and little packages, and
Yeah.
they like everything organized, and it's just become so ridiculous with subgenres of every. I mean, even doom metal. There's funeral doom, and
Yeah.
there's classic doom, and there's death doom, and there's gothic doom. It's like, you know what? We play dark metal. We dark, depressing, doomy, heavy, sometimes death, sometimes melodic. We are just a dark metal band. That's all we are.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I've always appreciated about your band is, you can potentially go, to that full almost death metal sound, but then you can back off and slow things up and just give the listener a bit of a break. And I think, especially on the new record Hamartia, you guys are kind of, definitely practicing that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from just all of our inspirations all along. It's funny when you read reviews of your record and people assume they know where you're drawing influence from, they're usually completely wrong. I mean, most of us in the band, Larry and I, the two guys have been around the longest. I mean, we're in our 40s, and so there's a lot of bands that we drew influence from when we started doing what we do when there weren't the popular death and doom bands around that people assume that we are inspired from. We are not. We have been around since 1989, before
Yeah.
a lot of these popular bands today even existed. And yet we still get blamed for like taking, from those bands. So untrue.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, part of our territory, I guess. The United States for this style of music was overlooked for a lot of years when
Yeah.
there were
Yeah.
a lot of great bands in the day.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to get into that, but I mean, I would imagine in terms of your own personal influences, it's whatever you were listening to when you were 13, 14, 15 years old, which, I mean, I suppose you could say Black Sabbath, but that would be like, just about anybody that's into any kind of heavy metal music would say Sabbath, but I mean,
You know what? I would not. I was
Really?
not a Black Sabbath fan. No, I wasn't. I
Wow.
can honestly tell you that they were not an influence on me coming up. I was into my first touches of like heavy metal were Kiss and Iron Maiden and the more classic kind of metal bands, and then it moved into Metallica and Slayer, and then I that breathed new life into me, and
Yeah.
then I started experimenting and finding bands like Forbidden, and I mean that's basically where the November's Doom the sound comes from. I'll be honest with you. I took elements from different bands that I wanted. My main vocal influences came from Chicago bands, Syndrome and Devastation.
Yeah, yeah.
They were doing something very unique at the time, and the clearness of the vocal, the clear audible vocal. Then I wanted a very heavy, growly sound, like a Celtic Frost mixed with like an early Grave. But I wanted that clean vocal, and I really was influenced by Russ from Forbidden when he did his clean passages. So I built, and I listened to Peter Gabriel, and I listened to, Pink Floyd, and there were a lot of bands like that, and the Doors with phenomenal vocals. They weren't the greatest singers, but they were
Yeah.
unique vocalists.
Yeah,
And I
for
tried
sure.
to put all of this together when I molded our sound.
I love that you bring up Jim Morrison. I've read that in other interviews that you've done recently, and from the past like 5, 6, 7 years.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll never say I thought Jim Morrison was a great singer, because I don't think he was, but what an incredible vocalist and frontman for that band.
For
I
sure.
mean, it was he did something very unique against all those other bands at the time, and I think it's what made them stand out.
Yeah, definitely. He did a lot with a little.
Absolutely. Most of it was probably drug induced, which I don't have that going for me. But yeah, yeah, he did something different. How can you not be inspired by someone who pretty much changed the generation?
Now you've got Hamartia coming out April 14th, and I think another thing that's being said by a lot of people, including yourself, is that this is the first album that you've had the same lineup for 2 consecutive albums.
Yeah, it's insane. Been around 28 years, and it's the first time we've had the same 5 guys record 2 albums in a row. That's nuts.
So what is it about this lineup that has sort of enabled things to stick?
You know what it is? I can't really go back in time and say that we ever kick someone out of the band because he didn't work out or things like that. It's always been someone at that point in a 2 or 3 year album cycle moves on with their life, and we all grew up together. So as you get older, you go off to school, or you find the love of your life and you move 2 states away, or you get another opportunity, a job opportunity. So everyone has always moved on, and because November's Doom has always been a glorified hobby and not a job, it's not something we pay our bills with, it's very difficult to have somebody stick around in that facet of their life for a hobby.
Yeah.
So it's just the way it works, because we're not a touring, money-making band. We do it because we love it, and sometimes you have to do something else in life. But I think this time I think everybody here that's in the band now has roots, and we know what needs to be done. Everybody loves what we're doing. And now finally with 2 albums of lineup and writing, we didn't have to focus on a new member.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we do an album, we have someone else in the mix. So half the time is trying to get that new person on the same page with us to make sure he's doing what we need him to do. This time we didn't have to focus on that at all. Everybody in the band knows exactly what's needed for this band, and they were able to shine this time instead of being held back or dialed in, pulled back a little bit with what they were writing. It was beautiful. It was a really great experience this time around.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, is you can tell that there's cohesion here.
Yeah, for the first time in a long time. I mean, usually it'll click between 2-3 people, and a couple others will be like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. And then it doesn't really come together until the end. And, this time, Larry and I are really bad for that, actually, even though we know it's going to work. But we're very overcritical of ourselves as a band. And, I mean, we can pop out an album every 6 months. I mean, it's not a matter of not being able to write material, but that material wouldn't be very good.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes us as long as we do, because it's an elimination process, and we write and we discard, and we write and we discard, and we write until we're really happy with the final product.
Yeah.
So we always try to better ourselves and make a better album than the previous one, and I definitely think we've been able to do that every time.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but you've used a familiar person here for production.
Oh yeah, we've stuck with
Chris. Is it Chris Juracek?
Yeah, we just call him Chris Wisco. It's easier to remember than his last name.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Chris, we've used Chris we've gone all the way back with him since the Knowing. I mean, we've been with Chris for many, many, many years. And Dan Swano, he's mixed and mastered our albums all the way back since the Pale Haunt departure. So he's been with us for, Pale Haunt, Novella, Inri, I got to count them. 5, 6 albums. Yeah, he's been with us a while. So
yeah,
that works out really well too, because everybody knows what needs to be done. There's no hand holding. There's no, and then when we experiment, it's experimentation that is bettering the song, not experimenting on how to get a better sound in the studio. Everyone knows what we need to do, and everyone knows the band, and it fires on all cylinders, and it gives us more time to focus on bettering the music.
Yeah. Well, now you mentioned that, 1989 marks, the inception of the band. So, I mean, even though it's only 2017, you must have the 30th anniversary sort of swirling in the back of your mind, right? I mean, you must be just starting to plan, perhaps, eh?
Absolutely nothing. We've never planned any sort of anniversary thing, and I know all these bands do it, but no, we haven't. But man, I don't know. It just makes me feel old, and it makes it makes me feel really old, and it makes it when I really sit back and look at it, it makes me feel ridiculous that I'm currently 45 years old, 2 years away from this band being 30, and I'm still growling like an asshole. It really, seriously, I mean, come on. I'm a grown-ass man with my own kid, and I get out there like Cookie Monster. It is kind of silly when you think about it. But, if doors didn't open up for me and I wasn't able to travel and see the world and do some of the amazing things that I've done, I don't know how long I would have done this.
Yeah.
I love it. But, as I get older, it gets harder to do. 45 years old, going out there and growling like that takes a toll on me like it didn't used to. I mean, I sound better, in my opinion, than I ever have in my life doing this.
Yeah.
But it's harder to do in long periods of time.
Yeah.
So, I'm not ready to quit. I tease it a lot, and I'll do it as long as I can and as long as we enjoy it. And we love what we do, so I don't see us quitting anytime soon.
For sure. Well, now, I know you've mentioned even a few times in this interview, though, that you guys aren't a touring band per se. So, I mean, what are the plans with this record?
We have a few things in the works right now. We're trying to put together something. We've never played on the West Coast. In our entire career, we've never gone west. So we're actually planning a West Coast run right now. With our families and kids and everything going on, we have very limited time to get away and do anything. So they're short runs, 5, 6 shows, 10 at the most, and then we have to come back. We can't do anything length wise. So we're going to hit the West Coast. We were trying to plan something on the East Coast. I'm not sure that's going to happen in the time frame we'd like. And we're looking to do something in Europe this year as well again. So
yeah.
Anytime we can do a festival or a bigger show like that for us, we go out, we'll go play Grass Pop or something like that, Brutal Assault in Czech Republic or Belgium, and we'll get in front of 15,000 people. One show we can play in front of more people than we can doing a 10-day tour. It just makes more sense to go for the bigger show opportunities to get more bang for your dollar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you're not the first person that I've talked to that have mentioned that. I mean, most notably, just because it's a fairly recent interview for me. I mean, Jeff Waters of Annihilator has said that before about how, they can get out, go, across the pond and play in one of these big European festivals and reach more people than they could on an entire tour and, quote unquote, actually make money, as opposed to if they, do a little jaunt across the United States or Canada, they'll play in front of a handful of people and, be lucky to break even.
Absolutely. Well, here's another part of the problem with the music industry. As soon as bands stopped making money from their actual CDs, and because there is no money in it anymore, because streaming is killing the industry as well, because bands don't get paid anything for the streaming music, and that's what everyone's doing now.
Yeah.
So there's less and less sales. Bands aren't making money from the music. The only way the band is going to make money now is touring, and every band knows this. So now the market is so oversaturated with bands touring, promoters don't want to give guarantees anymore, because any given person has a choice of like 15 shows to go to in their local town every single month.
Yeah.
Nobody has money to go to 15 shows. You have to pick one, maybe 2 that you really want to see. Ticket sales are inflated. So when you were drawing 350 people playing a show, you're lucky if you're pulling 40 now, because people are being spread out across 15 shows that they're choosing. The music industry is broken. It's severely broken. And I don't see any possible solution to this just yet.
Yeah, actually, you know how like if you're on Facebook now, what they've been doing is you can see, what you posted any given day, in the past, like it'll say, hey, these are your memories or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I was just reminded of the interview that I did with Joe Bonamassa a few years ago, where he said he had a friend who had 30 million spins. I think it might have been Spotify or one of those streaming services, but a buddy that had 30 million spins for a song that he wrote, and he got a check from that streaming for $750.
It's criminal. It's criminal. Everybody makes money off the band but the band. And everyone expects the band to work their tails to the bone with no help and no support.
Yeah.
But they want you to go out and work. So everyone can take the money from you before you. And at the end of the day, you're dipping into your own bank account to get by on the road or whatever it is you're going to do because you have no choice. And then you come home with nothing. And then everyone else is making money off the streaming services, off the downloads, off of everything. That's why a lot of these bands are giving up on record labels and doing everything themselves.
Yeah, it's a cost-cutting
at least they'll make something. Yeah, it's ugly. The business is horrible, and it's the business side of this that breaks up a lot of bands.
Is it sort of glorified T-shirt being glorified T-shirt salesman nowadays? I've even heard things described in that way.
If you are smart enough or lucky enough to keep your merchandise, if I have any advice for any guys out there starting out in bands, fight to keep your merchandise rights. Do not sign that away. That is your only source on the road or anything. If you sign your merchandise rights away, you're done.
Yeah.
They'll try to take your publishing rights too. Do not give up your publishing. If your song gets picked for one TV show or one video game, you could be set, depending on that. So publishing, merchandise, keep those rights.
You've got a background in graphic design, correct?
Yes, I do.
So do you design a lot of the T-shirts for your band? Is that a cost-cutting measure for yourself?
Not only do I design them, I also print them myself because my fiance has a T-shirt printing company. So yeah, we print our own merch as well.
Nice.
And that is the best way to make the most we possibly can from our merchandise. But even merchandise sales these days, I mean, you try to sell this at shows, you're competing with 4 other bands. You're competing with the bar. People go in and they want to spend their money at the bar. They don't want to buy necessarily a T-shirt or anything like that. So it all depends. I mean, what works out well for us is I understand how certain things work. And if you're going to play a show like 70,000 Tons of Metal, you need to make a T-shirt specifically boat related, and it sells out. It does. People walk up and say, I want every shirt that has something to do with the boat. And the last time we did it, our shirts were the first to sell out, and they sold out in like less than 2 hours. They were gone.
Yeah, well, and I've seen bands too, like depending on the country that they're in. Like, when I saw Kiss back in July, they had a Canadian themed shirt for their tour, even though they only did 2 dates in Canada. And I thought that was clever, because I would be more akin to purchase a shirt that would sort of, had the Canadian flag on it and so on and so forth, than getting just, whatever their generic tour shirt happened to be.
We did that in Brazil. We went to Brazil, Sao Paulo. We played 2 shows in Brazil, and like our logo shirt with the roots behind it, the roots were colored like the Brazilian flag. We did the same thing. And yeah, it worked out well, and it's a special shirt for those people that can only get it there, right there at that time. So yeah, I love stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and that's because in this modern market where the music is essentially free, people want to go to the shows and they want to leave with something tangible. It's more of a souvenir-driven industry, and especially if you've got cleverly marketed souvenirs, obviously you're going to do well.
Yeah, you have to offer them something that they can't just go home and buy from Amazon. You have to give them something different that if they don't buy it, they're going to regret it later.
Yeah. Do you guys have to schlep your own merch booth too, and kiss babies and sign T-shirts and so on and so forth? I mean, I would imagine you pretty much have to do that.
Yeah. I mean, we're that kind of band. Like we're always asked at different shows, especially in Brazil, places like that, to do meet and greets, and we will take every opportunity to do every meet and greet and sit down, and we will sign, take pictures, and meet anybody for as long as it takes
Yeah.
for free. I will never charge anybody a dime for a meet and greet or to meet me or to take pictures. That's ridiculous. And there are some bands that we've played with in the past at some of these shows where they refuse without being paid. They refuse to do meet and greets without being paid, and it disgusts me, because without those people, you wouldn't be able to be there doing what you're doing. How
Yeah.
dare you disrespect them in that way, where you won't even like sign your name for them on something that they've worked hard for their money, and they're there supporting you. Sign your damn name on their CD or go back home, because it's garbage.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, it's been cool talking with you today, Paul. Like, I definitely, I've heard the new record, Hamartia, coming out April 14th on the End Records, and I definitely like what I've heard, and I think it's a phenomenal album to add to the November's Doom catalog.
Excellent, and thank you very much for taking the time with me today. It's been awesome.